Picture, if you will, a young teenage boy trying to get his friend into anime. After some successes and some failures, he decides to chance on a title that the both of them have never seen or heard of. That show would quickly become a personal favorite for the both of them. That is how Gabe and I first saw Berserk. Yeah, back in 2005 or 6, it might have been, we both came across the entire DVD set at our local video rental store called Videodroid, and on a whim, we rented it volume by volume over the course of a month, and we were both hooked. To this day, every time I turn the corner at the droid and I see the DVD still there on the shelf, I can't help but smile. Even Gabe here can tell you that Berserk is one of his personal favorite anime as well as mine, right, Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, whether you're talking about the...
Thanks, Gabe! Berserk is a series that is as close to mine and Gabe's heart as anything we've ever seen. And I suspect it's close to yours, too. Not just because it's a great action show, but because it's a great action show that rewards you for digging deeper into it. I'll admit the thing that got my curiosity going with Berserk was that it looked nothing like the anime that was coming out at the time. You see, this was the mid-2000s, when anime was in the middle of another recession after a surge in popularity. I'm pretty damn skippy that most of you remember back around 2002 to 2004, when it seemed like anime and manga were everywhere. Best Buys, FYEs, Walden Books, Borders, Barnes & Nobles, they were all filled with shelves upon shelves of DVDs and manga. But as the decade went on, the dedicated retail spaces shrank, and the stores began going out of business. The model of $30 for 4 episodes of a series was proving to be too costly, especially with the emergence of online sharing sites like LimeWire and BitTorrent. What could anime companies do but try to find series that were still selling in the market and try to replicate it? And unfortunately, the only shows that were still selling were shonen series like Naruto and One Piece, and moe crap. By 2004, the quote-unquote moe industry had generated something to the tune of 88 billion yen in Japan. So it's no wonder that in the following years, American fans were drowned in a lake of cutesy saccharine wretch. Look, no offense to you if you like all of this, but my definition of hell is being strapped to a chair and then Clockwork Orange with nothing but moe titles until I lose my goddamn mind. To no one's surprise, least of all my own, this was about the time that my interest with anime began to wane. New titles that were being shipped out to the States didn't interest me, which caused me to look to older titles to see if there were any hidden gems. From that point of view, Berserk might as well have been a 24-karat diamond in a brick-dense hunk of pig shit. Not just because of the titles it found itself surrounded by, but also because of how it looks. Some of the more obvious aspects about Berserk, visually speaking at least, is that the main character looks remarkably more masculine than any contemporaneous anime lead at the time. Even his name is hyper-masculine to the point of absurdity. Guts. Sounds like a nickname for David Ryder, doesn't it?
Fridge, large meat.
Punt, speed chunk.
Butch, deadlift.
Also, his goddamn sword is the biggest motherfucking claymore this side of Nightmare from Soul Calibur. And you thought Cloud was pushing the limits of impossibly humongous swords. This can't even scratch the threshold of believability. It'd be easier to swing fucking Mjolnir than this girder from a cruise liner.
My sword has gotten very dull. However, it's 3 times as thick and does 3 times the damage of a normal sword. You'd better pray you die quickly, or this could be painful.
Well, that's awesome and everything, as well as really goofy, but what else immediately jumps at us? Well, his foil, Griffith, might as well be the diametric opposite of him, both in appearance and coding. Also, the setting is weirdly non-Japanese. Even a cursory glance at any episode would liken it to something more along the lines of Game of Thrones than anything identifiably Japanese, or Asian for that matter. Lastly, the anime kind of looks ho-hum. Technically speaking, there's very little about the show that strikes the viewer and makes it stand out, save for by comparison. Yes, when you contrast it with the anime that was coming out at the time, the difference is night and day, but there's little, if anything, that the show can claim for itself as a visual signature, save for the aforementioned humongous sword in the last few episodes, but we will get to that in a bit. Oh, while we're still talking about the visuals, it doesn't take long for you to recognize that it's animated pretty poorly. Besides reusing animation loops and other shortcuts, Berserk is heavily reliant on the watercolor still frame instead of actual animation. And when I say heavily reliant, I mean laughably so.
Kill every last one of them! Burn everything!
God damn it! Even Ken Burns would tell them to tighten it up. So, it's obvious that the series was made and animated on a shoestring budget that probably would have left Roger Corman eating ramen noodles for a month, but a lot of these faults can be overlooked with great storytelling and characters, as long as the show gets off on the right foot. This is about initial impressions after all, and you know what they say. You never get a second chance at them. Sadly, they kind of dropped the ball here too. Well, it's only a dropped ball once you've watched the entire series, but the beginning episode is probably the weakest aspect of the entire run. Hell, even if you don't watch the entire series, the first episode leaves you feeling like it was alright-ish. It starts with Guts letting everyone know in a tavern why he's called the Black Swordsman. Seems the village has been under the tyrannical rule of an unmistakably obvious evil lord who just so happens to be a snake demon. Still, demon or no, nothing escapes an arrow to the eye. Or several arrows, as it were. And it's here that you would expect that the series would go on about Guts' many bloody adventures, slaying demons and being a stoic badass. But no. It instead ends on a flashback to his youth. And from there, it just tells the story of how Guts turned into the man we saw at the beginning of the episode. We don't even catch up to the present until the very last scene of the very last episode. Anyone who's seen Berserk always has the exact same criticism afterward, that the story felt pointless. After all, we leave Guts where he began, so the story winds up circular and without any forward momentum, which is especially galling because the ending leaves the story on quite a lot of loose ends. What's worse is that this problem could have been alleviated if they just cut the first episode. I mean, sure, it introduces us the character of Guts and also clues in the audience that he's a walking death machine, but in the long run, all it does is set up the audience for disappointment. And it's not like the second or third episodes don't flesh out Guts' character, because they do. If you skip the first episode, you will not have missed anything crucial, and would in fact be more invested in what is happening by virtue of not knowing where this will all lead to. You won't be waiting for Guts to lose his eye or arm, because you don't know he will. You could make the argument that knowing the specifics of how Guts loses his eye and arm creates intrigue, but that's an interest rooted in the concept of abstract meta-narrative instead of something solid like plot development. Okay, here's what I mean. If you compare and contrast the Guts at the beginning of the first episode with the Guts at the end of the episode, there is a remarked difference, and I mean besides age and fewer body parts. His attitude and demeanor are different. His emotions are more clear and defined when he was younger, as to be expected.
Our contract expired today, didn't it? Seems the fighting is over around here.
Wait a minute. I will secure your position and income as well. You won't need to put yourself in danger as a grunt during the war.
Don't touch me! Don't you ever touch me.
His actions and words reflect a completely different character from the older Guts who seems personally driven in his bloodshed to the younger Guts who just seems to love to fight. Looking at these contrasting personalities, there is the analytical allure of finding out what happened to cause Guts to grow into such a different person, but from an investment perspective, it feels like we, the audience, were cheated out of an emotional transition. We now know what he will grow up into before we even meet the younger him. And considering that the crux of the story is his coming-of-age tale, the issue is compounded even further. It'd be like if Breaking Bad began with Walter White in his hidden-away cabin, and the resulting story is just him reminiscing about how he got to the point where he's at. But my overall point isn't that the beginning was done poorly, it's that the series doesn't make a good first impression. The art is uninspired, the animation is barely there, and the story sets itself up for failure. But it doesn't fail. By all outward appearances, this should have no reason or way of being as good as it is, and that's because its strength lies in its characters and themes, both aspects that are not perceptibly obvious and take time to mature and resonate with the audience. Let's start with our protagonist, Guts. We know he's a warrior and a swordsman and just about the deadliest thing on two legs, but there is more to him. Over the course of the show, we learn more about his past, which is one of constant conflict. There was hardly a time in his life where death and battle weren't surrounding his every waking hour, forming a man who can only become what he is.
Unbelievable! Despite his wounds, he's beaten nearly half of my 100 men! So then, he has some skill.
Huh? What's that you say? So there are still 50 of you left standing. At this rate, it'll be done before I can crack open all of your skulls.
In less capable hands, this would be the story of a villain to be, a violent psychopath whose urge to kill and conquer is all-encompassing. But Guts, while morally ambiguous, hardly fits on the evil alignment scale. His personal journey starts on familiar villainous ground, yes, but through interaction with his friends and brothers-in-arms, he finds new purpose in the bloodshed. At no point does the show frame what he is doing as being morally compromised, but rather as a sad fact of life. His story is probably one of many as a child growing up in the world of Midland, a constantly warring state between kingdoms over land, property, and people. The only thing separating him from another is his full-on, inhuman-level ability to be great at battle. In a world where his feats are looked at with awe and reverence, if not a healthy dose of fear, morality becomes a more hazy and ill-defined question. Is Guts a bad person because he kills people? Is he evil because he's good at it? Or is he just a handy tool for someone else to use?
You must not be seen, either. Because of the nature of this task, you are the only person I can trust. You have a choice.
His inward examination of strength and ambition is darkly reflected in his friend/rival, Griffith. You know, the swishy-looking guy. Having been conscripted in Griffith's army, the Band of the Hawk, after losing to him in a fight, Guts learns for the first time in his life to fight for something other than his continued survival, for the dream of Griffith. The relationship between these two characters is the central focus of the entire anime, and it also provides a focal point for the story's themes. Besides sharing an interest in battle, both Guts and Griffith also relate to one another by their mutual need to prove themselves. The real difference being that Guts has a need to prove to himself his worth, while Griffith's is more outwardly dependent.
You might be grateful for the rank and position that Griffith and no one else saw fit to bestow upon you. The position an ass like you does not deserve.
I don't want what another man can give me. If he grants me anything, then it's his to give and not my own.
Now you sound like a goddamn woman!
Guts' aim is towards more singular events, like one-on-one fighting in tournaments.
Well, you look like a big one. How about it? Feel like a friendly competition?
Griffith, meanwhile, aims for titles and lordship, a status that says he is better than everyone else just by virtue of existing.
I believe that it is proper for me to grant Count Griffith and the Hawks the title of White Knights, with supreme command over all of Midland's armies.
This need drives the plot as Griffith guides Guts and the rest of the Band of the Hawk to glory, fighting for the King of Midland, not for the sake of ending war, but in hopes to curry noble favor and forge his own kingdom. And as comfortable and capable as he is on the battlefield, Griffith proves that he too can also play, well, the Game of Thrones. From sussing out the conspirators that plot against him and eliminating anyone who dares get in his way, we begin to see Griffith for what he really is, a romantic but dangerously focused sociopath. This transition from young idealist to cold, calculating mastermind is helped along by the fact that we don't know much about Griffith for the majority of the series. We only learn about his calculating, underhanded actions after they were performed, and nearly every personal detail we learn about him comes from the perspective of others.
If I could never be the best, then I would find the man who could and serve at his side. Every man at some point dreams of greatness.
It's very rare that Griffith actually talks about his past, only opening up to Guts and Griffith's second-in-command, Casca.
Oh, this? Well, I got this from an old fortune-teller woman a long time ago. It's a bailet. She called it the Egg of the King. For once you possess this, you are destined to rule the world, in exchange for your flesh and blood.
Because of all this, we the viewers can't help but see Griffith as how the other characters see Griffith, as this larger-than-life charisma knight that will lead us all to the promised land. In myth-making terms, he is anime Brad Pitt. From a story writing perspective, the best way to mythologize and elevate a character from quote-unquote mere mortal status is to not frame the story from their perspective, but rather from the characters surrounding him. For instance, even though the narrator Jack is the main character in Fight Club, all anyone can talk about or focus on is Tyler Durden. An aging Bill Parrish makes a speech that intrigues Death himself, but even Parrish's own daughter can hardly keep her eyes and attention off the unknowable and mysterious Joe Black. A French rebel plots against the Third Reich and succeeds in pulling off her deadly scheme and trapping every major Nazi officer in a theater that she burnt down, even dying so that this plan may succeed. But it's not her that Hitler fears, or is even aware of. It's Aldo Raine and his Inglourious Bastards. For the rest of the Band of the Hawk, Griffith is all anyone they can care about, to the point where they can't even recognize Guts' own greatness. Throughout the series, Guts' accomplishments are either on par with Griffith's, or they exceed them, and yet whenever somebody tries to compare the two, they either just laugh it off, or they outright dismiss it.
I want to be at his side, as an equal when I have forged something for myself. No more. No more will I be anything less to Griffith than his equal.
You think yourself Griffith's equal? God damn you and your childish bitching! I won't listen to it! Griffith is exceptional and you are beneath him.
Even Guts kind of buys into the cult of Griffith, once pledging his life and sword for his goal, but the enthrallment wears off when there are simply no more enemies to fight. Conflicted with his need to fight and his want to stay true to his friend, Guts finally decides that it's time, after several years of fighting together, to go out on his own. Unsurprisingly, this is unthinkable to Griffith, who challenges him once again. This moment is made so much more impactful by the fact that the show keeps addressing the theme of power and powerlessness. As we learn from Casca and a few others, Griffith inspired each and every one of his soldiers to overcome their position in life and claim their own personal strength and glory.
But what the angel offered me was not the salvation I expected.
If you have something to protect, then take up the sword.
But the road from ordinary mercenary company to an infantry in the King's army involved not only bloodshed, but a more intimate sacrifice on the part of Griffith.
Why would you do that with him?
For the money. Maintaining an army is quite costly. Soldiers, horses, provisions, and equipment. None of these are free.
Affected by the death of a young child soldier under his banner, Griffith sells his body for a night so as to gather money for his army and expedite his dream of a kingdom. To Griffith, the stigma of selling his body means nothing if it helps him realize his dream, especially if it means fewer deaths of his soldiers. But when faced with the reality that there is someone who is stronger than he is, someone he cannot control, he resorts to desperation, and enters the room of the king's daughter at night. Because we can only speculate as to Griffith's motivations, we're left wondering if he thought that bedding the princess would mean eventual marriage and inheriting the king's throne, or if he simply needed to regain some semblance of manhood after this symbolic castration of a fight. Regardless of his thinking, the affair is exposed and Griffith is arrested. With the Band of the Hawk now disgraced and Griffith in the hands of a torturous dungeon keeper...
Oh, now there, don't worry. I'll stay away from the vital bit. You won't die yet. You see, I've been ordered by our king to keep you around at least another 3 years. But I don't know. I like you.
And remember, this is for posterity, so be honest. How do you feel? Interesting.
Guts rallies the remaining troops and rescues him. But it's too late, and he's now only a shell of his former self. To go on from here would be spoiling the series for those who haven't seen it, but judging from the beginning, you can probably surmise what might have happened. Maybe not specifically, surely, but enough plot happens in the last few episodes that I feel like going over them would absolutely ruin it for anyone who hasn't seen the series. Suffice it to say, the ending is near perfect. A gem of a climax that will leave you emotionally drained but entirely satisfied. The only detraction I can really make is, again, that the beginning takes away the surprise of everything. Still, a hell of an ending is a hell of an ending. To see Berserk unfold from the first episode to the last is something very special to anime. And I think that's why it's one of my personal favorite anime of all time, if not my most favorite. It's the only TV series I've ever seen that got better and better with each passing episode, and the experience I had when I watched the entire series has yet to be matched by anything I've seen yet in anime. Even with its poorly advised beginning and really cheap animation, Berserk still stands out in my mind as one of the all-time greats. Hell, even the animation shortcuts are sometimes used with startling effectiveness.
I'm changing. There may be a place for me in this man's soul. Not because of what I may receive, but for something of worth I may have for him.
And the fact that this is all coupled together with a fantastic score by one of my most favorite composers, Susumu Hirasawa, means that I just cannot recommend this highly enough. Even if you're squeamish around violence and gore, I'd still urge you all to watch it. Oh, and if you need any more convincing, there's plenty of gay subtext if that's your thing. In fact, sometimes it crosses the line and becomes plain old looking, but my point still remains that there is something for everyone here in Berserk, and as long as you give the series a shot, then I can walk away happy. Well, thus Anime Abandoned ends for 2015. And even though the month didn't go the way I expected it to, on the whole, I feel like I had a pretty good year. Here's to a bright future for all of us, and may kindness find each and every one of you. I'll be back in 2016 with the one and only Robot Carnival, but until then, Happy New Year. Long live your Lord High Regent Sage! Long live Benetopia!